welcome to University Galacticus. This is January 16th, 2025. And my guest today is Karen Holton. She's an ET and angelic experiencer, author, exo-political ambassador, holistic coach, and transdimensional channel. Her professional experience includes shamanic guidance, awakening and ascension counseling, as well as public discourses. And she has her own podcast called Quantum Guides Show, which I'll link below this video, along with her other links. And we're going to talk about her book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors. So welcome, Karen. Great to meet you for the first time.
This is really nice to meet you too, Brian, and thank you so much for inviting me to your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I want to hear about more your story and your book. When was your book first published?
I just published it December 11th, 2024. So it's
Oh,
just been out for a few weeks.
wow, that's brand new. Holy smokes.
Mhm.
Wow. So what's the background with your book?
Well, my experience is a little unusual, my ET contact experience. So
Usually are.
I'll quickly just run over. The first chapter is basically to orient the readers so they understand where I'm coming from. So I'm not part of any politic or religious group or UFO group or the secret space program, nothing like that. I talk a little bit about the false matrix of control and how I believe that has played into the fact that we have not heard a lot of ET contact experiences over the last 100 years. What are the things that have shut that down? And I also talk a little bit about how a lot of people think space travel is impossible because it would take us thousands of years in a spaceship to fly from point A to point B, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. Space is so big. I mean, we can hardly even conceive of it. But as I explain in my book, these beings have technology where they cause point A to become point B. There's
Uh,
no travel, it's just the altering of frequency and the shifting into what we would consider other positions. So then the second chapter, oh, please stop me if you have any questions. And the second chapter is all about my life of my paranormal experiences as a child and some of the traumatic experiences I went through in my life. I don't get into too many gory details, but I mention enough that you get the gist that obviously I had some trauma in my childhood. And the reason I mention it is because many of us, Brian, have. There's almost nobody we know who hasn't been one way or another traumatized. And although these events should have never happened and they were not good, when we work our way through it, we discover that we've been given sort of gifts. Like, for instance, I believe when a door closes, a window opens. And I believe that traumatic events in our life helps us to be able to tap into unseen forces or resources that maybe other people are not able to pick up on. And we do that because we're able to dissociate. And that's another whole story there. Then in chapter 3, I get into the actual extraterrestrial experience. Chapter 3 is um, about the intergalactic resettlement program, the resettlement program. How did humans get here? All kinds of things like that. And then chapter 4 is, what is ET like? What do they look like? What do they eat? What do they do? Like, what are their beliefs? What are they like? And I get into quite a lot of detail. The next chapter, I talk about my orientation, how I discovered myself aboard the big ship, what that was like, what my process of adjustment was like. And at this point, I want to stop and make it really clear that my experiences are what I consider transdimensional. Brian, I have no memory. I'm going to just tell you up front. I have no memory of a spaceship coming and picking me up and taking me someplace else. It didn't happen that way for me. How it happened for me is I'd go to bed and I'd get into my jammies and tuck myself into bed and go off to sleep. And this was during a specific 3-month period of our Earth time back in 2014. And every night I was transported I'm assuming, I don't know if I was transported physically, whether it was some kind of non-local physical a relocation, or whether it was consciousness transfer, but I was relocated to the big ship every night for 3 months of our time. And every morning I would wake up and it would be the next day and I'd be in my bed. And at first I thought, oh my God, I'm dreaming. How could I be dreaming this stuff? This is fantastic. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is there's a time dilation. So, although I was gone for maybe 8 to 10 hours at night, I was actually experiencing it as days, weeks, even months of adventures being away. Then I would wake up in my bed in the morning and I'd check and it would be the very next day and it would just blow my mind. When I went back to bed that night, went back to sleep, I picked up from where I had left off in the morning before I had woke. So it was completely congruent. And the adventures went on night after night. And my head was so full, I was exhausted because my head was so full of days, weeks, and months of interaction and adventure that there wasn't even enough time to unpack it or sort it out or make sense of it during my waking hours. And then I was back experiencing even more. And so then after I realized that I wasn't dreaming, I thought I was crazy. I honest to God thought I was crazy. But then after a while, I went crazy or not. I loved it there. I loved it so much there that it was a bummer to come back and uh, and face society as we have it here in the here and now. So I want to make that really clear. And that's why the name of the book is Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, because I believe that we all have the potential for transdimensional contact. And there are many, many, many different kinds of beings. So then I think I mentioned I did a whole chapter on what are these beings like? What do they look like? I've got an image here. Whoops. This is an AI generated. I was not able to take a selfie and bring it back with me. I had very long white hair back then. So the person in the middle represents me. But you can see that the being on this side looks very much like human. You would never know that she was an ET. Whereas the other being, you would go, wow, that's definitely an ET, right? And so everything in between is who I met and interacted with. So they're not stereotypical. There's so many different kinds of beings, but what we all have in common is we're humanoid. So we all have 2 arms and 2 legs and a body and a head. And that was very interesting. I then do a whole chapter about the big ship, what that was like. How does that operate? Is it like being in a Star Trek episode or a Star Wars episode? But no, it's completely different than either of those. I talk about how the big ship operates, what we do for a food source, all kinds of stuff. And then I do a long chapter about how I lived my everyday life while on board. So, what I did from the time I woke up in the morning, and yes, I would eat, sleep, go to the bathroom, everything while I was there. And that's why I say there's a time dilation. And what we did, and what we did when we would meet up with other city ships and just tons of stuff, even cultural events I attended and off-world ceremonies and all kinds of stuff. And then I get into love, reproduction, and sex, because a lot of people don't necessarily talk about that. So their concept for love is a much more expanded version than what we experience here on Earth. Reproduction is done the same way humans do it. I just saw no evidence of cloning or anything like that. And I'm not going to talk too much about the private part. You got to buy the book to read about that. And then the last 2 chapters I talk about, chapter 9 is all about how everyone can make contact, how they can have their own transdimensional experiences. And then the final chapter is about what ET thinks of us. And my closing sort of comments. And I do include quite a few images. And again, they're AI generated. I just want to be upfront about it. But I was able to work with AI and come very close to the beings that I interacted with. So I put quite a few pictures in there because people are curious. It's one thing to read about it, it's another thing to see images. And so, sorry, that's an overview. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, Brian. Sorry, I was rather
Yeah,
lengthy.
no, that was good. I have researched other case of this time dilation where someone would be taken away, for a short time, but they experience a long time interval and then they're brought
Yeah.
back, or the ETs can take them and bring them back at the exact moment that they left. So they seem to have that incredible technological ability to do that. Yeah.
They're very technologically advanced. As far as their state of development, they're not that far ahead of us, but they are at our next stage of development. So they put away their warring ways, they put away conflict, they only communicate through telepathy, which is a much more honest and more effective way to communicate. They're very peaceful, loving beings. They operate on what I call the love harmonic because it's the only system that works. And love is not a romance. It can definitely include, warm, fuzzy feelings for other beings, but it also includes patience and self-control and faith and mildness and being peaceful. I mean, all of those, there's like a whole bunch of attributes that go into what love is. And when you operate a society, whether it's the size of a big city ship or a planet, it works because people are respectful of each other and they're empathetic and there's no psychopathy. And we can't even imagine what a world or an environment without psychopathy, what that might look like.
Yeah, I'm interested in the big ships. Like our logo here on University Galacticus, I've got these representation of these city-sized ships. These are just this is described by Susie Hansen. I've
Mhm.
watched all of her videos in her book, The Dual Soul Connection. She describes being these city-sized ships where you can see there's like a landing bay in the middle. It's kind of like Saturn shape and huge thing. I'm wondering, is this the same kind of shape, or the same kind of city-sized shape that you were into?
This is really interesting because it definitely has its similarities. So I only saw the big ship from the outside once, and it looked like a sphere that was a little bit flattened on the top and the bottom. And instead of a ring around it, it had arms that came out and curved, kind of like the arms of a galaxy. And they come out. There's an image of an AI generated image, not the gold flower of life, but the actual ship sitting inside. See how it has the arms? So it's very similar. And when it meets up with other city ships, they stack on the top or on the bottom, and it becomes one unit. Now, the size of these city ships is beyond enormous, Brian. Some of them are as big as the largest metropolis here on Earth. The one that I was on probably housed 3 or 4 million people, maybe more, maybe 10,000 million beings. Okay, but some of them are even larger. Some are larger than our Earth. Like they're humongous. And the other thing I learned on board, there's a training system where we're able to wear what I call a virtual reality headset. It's just a narrow band that goes around the back of your head, two little buttons that sit on your temples. There's nothing on the front, there's no goggles, nothing like that. But when you wear them, you tap into the consciousness of the big ship and you're able to get any information at all about anything. And while I was using that, I learned that there are actual, I'm going to call them worlds. What they are these city ships, and they form like a mesh like grid around a small star. And those arms actually move and point outwards so that they're kind of star shaped and they connect tip to tip on these arms and they form these meshes around these small stars. And it's in these massive populated systems that new city ships are actually created. And like I said, they're actually conscious. They're not nuts and bolts machines. So one of the first things I realized from my orientation was I was just looking around and I noticed there was no square rooms. Everything was kind of oval or ovoid shaped. And I noticed the walls were kind of a light cream color and they kind of looked kind of like leather. And I went up to the wall and I ran my finger down the wall and little ripples emanated from it because it's actually a living creature. It's not a nuts and bolts mechanical metallic thing like what we're used to thinking of big ships as being. And it has a symbiotic relationship with the beings who live on board. And so I thought that was super interesting. And apparently, they have to be alive in order to travel, what we would call travel, through interdimensional space. So the next thing I want to say is people ask me, where is the big ship? Is it in, Zeti Reticuli, or is it in the Pleiades, or where is it? And it's actually nowhere and everywhere, and it's here. So what I mean by that is if you can imagine, and if your audience can imagine a Venn diagram is where different systems overlap and share commonality. So imagine 100 ovals, and each oval represents a different timeline, a different dimension, a different spot within the multiverse. And imagine them arranged like a giant daisy so that in the center, they all overlap. That's an interdimensional envelope, and that's where the big ship sits. And because of that being where it is located, beings from all kinds of timelines, dimensional realities, realms, physicality, non physicality, they can easily access the big ship. It's meant for beings to access, go through orientation, training, exopolitical ambassadorship, where we're giving input into what it's like for me, what it's like for me to be human, what's going on Earth, how I'm perceiving things on Earth. And it's really an amazing, amazing system. And the other thing I learned is that there are millions of us here on Earth today who are having transdimensional experiences. It's just that most don't remember. And the reason they don't remember is so that they can re-embed themselves into the Earth's, our society, because we're here for what I would consider soul development. And also it might not be safe for us to bring all our memories back with us. So we choose to have our memories suppressed, but then when there's a triggering event or the time is right, we start to remember. And so people out there that are starting to recognize they're having transdimensional experiences, you're not crazy. You're not imagining it. You're not dreaming. This is a perfectly natural phenomenon that many, many of us experience. Sorry, I'll just stop there and let you ask questions, Brian.
Yeah, I got a few questions. Well, first with the large ships, I read from several sources. For instance, they can be up to 200 miles across. One source said there could be like six at a time around Earth, and even back in 1950, Harvard astronomy, they had photographs of these like two objects about 400 miles up and 600 miles up, and then the next day they were gone. They took a plate of photographs, so that might have been one of these ships. And even during the time of the 1952 UFO overflight over Washington, D.C., one of these ships was there at the time. So Richard Dolan, he postulates that UFOs are just running sorties from these motherships. We can't see them, not visible to us. So it's probably quite reasonable that there are these city-sized ships, and that's probably where they're operating from. So it's fantastic that you're on them. Like Susie Hansen, she does describe being in the craft. She even described like what you described with the virtual reality thing. She would go into a Gray took her into their room. They have these little rooms, and they have what looks like a dentist chair, and then they sit and have this kind of virtual reality screen that they can, like you said,
Yeah.
they can go anywhere, experience any part of the galaxy or anywhere they want to go. So
Mhm.
it's just, I want to hear more of your experiences on the ship, like what it looked like, and And Susie, she does describe, well, she asked them, how do you eat? They took her into this kitchen. There's about 8 little grays sitting there. They have this little machine with a little wafer that they can dissolves on their skin, or they put it in their mouth and it dissolves. And they describe this as how they eat with these little wafers that dissolve on contact.
Uh-huh. Well, again, as I mentioned, my experience is not necessarily like other people's, and
No, no.
that's okay because we're probably dealing with different beings and
Yeah.
all kinds of differences. So the first thing I want to say is, when you're on watching a Star Trek episode, there's all these people or beings sitting in front of screens, and they've got these panels with all these lights, and they're constantly making adjustments. Well, there was none of that on the big ship, none at all. I never saw any evidence of technology besides the food preparation stations and the tablets that we used and the virtual reality headsets. There was no evidence of technology. So the crew are linked telepathically to the ship. And so they're able to assist in any way the big ship needs assistance telepathically. So there are no screens, there was no technology, they're beyond all of that. And the other thing that was really cool, super cool, was that everything just materializes as if out of nothing, like magic. So the ship has the ability to sense what it is you need or want, and then it enables like a physical, biological, I'm just using words that I have in my vocabulary to describe something quite fantastic, but kind of like a self-assembling nanotechnology where things just come into being when you need them, and then they dissolve or disassemble when you're finished. And I thought that was really, really interesting. A lot of beings don't sit on furniture because even the floor is sort of soft and yielding to your form. And so it kind of conforms to your body, providing a very comfortable place. Interestingly, that your friend mentioned these lounge chairs. Yes, there are, when people desire them, there are self-assembling units that do look a bit like a dentist chair, and you can recline very comfortably and securely on them while you're using the virtual headset. Because when you're using the virtual headset, you're not seeing it with your eyes, you're living it in your head as though you're actually experiencing it. So say, for instance, you want to go rock climbing or something, you want to be on a very secure, comfortable piece of furniture that's going to hold you while you're going through all this experience within your imagination. And your imagination is actually technology. It is a portal system. It's what we use to traverse interdimensional space. It's just that we've been told, oh no, that's just your imagination. That's just there to amuse you or to make up stuff or whatever. No, we as human beings and other beings, we have this amazing inborn technology that when we learn how to use it, it makes anything possible. That's what we use for manifesting or having our prayers answered. It's an amazing, amazing technology. So, yeah, and the difference between your friend's experience and mine is we actually eat real food. I saw no animals on board, but there are beautiful hydroponic gardens growing along the walls and coming up out of growing stations. And of course, botany is a really big deal. And we pick and whatever we like, whatever we want to eat is what we pick, and we take it to these food preparation stations. And again, they're just kind of created out of nothing, or that's how it appears. They've got warming and cooling elements, and all the beings kind of take pride in their culinary delights and show you different ways of preparing foods. And it was a very enjoyable experience. And when we were done, you know, everything that we used, plates, utensils, you name it, same as our clothes at the end of the day, everything just goes into a recycling chute. So remember, the ship is biological. So its environmental system is like its breathing system, and the recycling system is like its digestive system. So all the waste material goes, I didn't actually see it, but I did learn about it, goes into a system where it is sorted. They've got critters that I'm going to call bugs that live in that environment and break everything down. And then fresh water is filtered out of there. And then a more viscous fluid is filtered out of there that services the hydroponic system. So it's like a circulatory system coming from the digestive system. And then the more solid waste goes into a system that I'm going to describe it as being halfway between a 3D printer and a replicator, like what you would see on Star Trek. And what happens is everything we want and desire is created by this technology. And then we can have everything we want and need. There's no money, there's no need for money. Everything is there and in abundant supply as we want it and need it. It's really quite a system.
Yeah, I want to comment on the ship being alive. I know other experiences have said that as well. Like some have flown small craft and they connect their minds with the craft, sometimes with their hand on a panel, and the craft seems alive or it is alive. It's like an extension of their mind. Other people have said that. And Susie did describe, she was just talking about the grays eating, not herself, but she said in the rooms they would have these little beds that come out of the walls and the grays would lie down on it for maybe just 20 minutes. And it's similar to sleep. And what she described as kind of a defragmentation of their brain where they would connect with what she called the big brain. She was 12 years
Mhm.
old at the time, thought of it as a big brain. And that's when they would sort of like join with the big brain and also get the instructions for the next day. So it's kind of part of the hive mind or communal mind and telepathy.
Mhm.
That's so just wondering if you saw anything like that when you're on the craft.
No, things were actually, well, I was going to say normal, but no, not really normal. Um, Different beings have different sleep requirements. Different beings have different circadian rhythms, have different nutritional needs. We do have something called the healing pods. I got to experience that. So imagine it's kind of like a big oblong pod, and the top lifts up like a clamshell and you go inside, and the bottom of it is kind of like a moss like material, and the lid comes down, and then you experience all different kinds of frequencies, smells, lights, sounds. It's all frequency healing. And that nurtures the body and puts you back into perfect health again. So the healing pods are what they use. Nobody works out or goes to the gym or anything like that. How we get around on the big ship is most beings walk, but there's also a vertical system and a horizontal system. The vertical system is really quite different. So you basically come to the edge of a platform, and when you look down, it's quite far, like a kilometer or 2 kilometers down, which is a little bit less than a couple of miles in American terms. If you want to go down to the docking bay, or if you want to go up to a different floor, you want to go down to a lower level, right? And you step off as though you're stepping off a cliff, literally, but something uh, um, sort of holds you there so that you don't fall. And then there's two sort of narrow hand grips, and you put your hands on them. And depending on how fast you want to go up or down, is how hard you squeeze on there. And I wanted to go really fast because I wanted to see what that would feel like. Plus, I thought it would be fun, and I wasn't afraid because there is no falling. There's no free falling. I don't know how it works. So anyway, I'm going down towards the docking bay, and another being, a female, she wants to come down after me, and she jumps on head first, and she squeezes them, and they cut, and so she's going really fast too. And we just sort of played a game like a mock pursuit where she's coming down after me, and we were both laughing so hard. And when you get down to the bottom, it just feels like a little poof of air, and you step off and you're on another level. Very, very easy to use, very interesting. And as far as getting around horizontally, if you want to go a long distance from one end of the ship to another, there is part of the walkway or pathway down the corridors is like a conveyor belt system, but there's no moving parts. You just stand on it and you travel as fast as you're comfortable traveling on. And somehow they're able to buffer us so that we're not feeling the force of movement, whether we're going up or down or whether we're going back and forth. So I thought that was pretty interesting too.
Wow, yeah. I know in the free study, Ray Hernandez did the free study of thousands of people. He said most people had contact that wasn't physical in the body. It was like out of body or astral travel. So I think your experience is quite common that people have an experience that's not necessarily physical. It could just be your consciousness. Do you think it was like your astral body? Would just they would take you out
Um,
in that?
I believe I have traveled to the big ship a number of different ways. So when I do the exopolitical ambassador meetings and sessions, I'm definitely there etherically. And the reason I know that is because I'll be in the middle of a meeting, somebody's given a presentation, and all of a sudden I'm aware that I have to pee. And it's the middle of the night for me, right? So as soon as I wake up to go use my washroom, it's like I know I'm no longer there, I'm here. And then after I use the washroom and I fall back asleep, I'm no longer here, I'm there. So I
Oh yeah,
think my
yeah.
body is here on earth, but my astral self or my etheric self travels. And that's how I do the exopolitical work. And I still do that work today. And I have very, very few memories. I believe that I consciously agree to forget because I don't want men in black pestering me or being held hostage for what I know. And I'm guessing I know quite a bit because I don't have any access to it whatsoever. Now, another way that you can go there is a consciousness transfer. And the consciousness transfer, you have several options. So, for instance, you can actually swap consciousness with a being who lives on the big ship for short periods of time where they are now in my body and I'm in theirs. That's another option that some people use or beings use. And then there are what I call the one size fits all clones or the generic clone bodies. Now, I have no idea whether these clone bodies are manufactured, printed, are actual biological clones. I know, but I don't remember. So I'd be guessing. I don't know what they're made out of. But they look very much like this being, which looks like what we consider a gray. And when you go and you swap consciousness and you're in one of these clone bodies, they all look exactly the same. But you can tell beings apart because we have different ways of walking and moving and standing and gesturing, you know. But usually beings are only in them for a couple of days, so they don't necessarily have the need to eat or sleep or go to the bathroom. It's just like a temporary housing unit for your consciousness so that you can have some physicality if you need it. And I got to tell you, I only used it a couple of times because psychologically I had a hard time with it. So the first time I was in the clone body and I looked in the mirror, I didn't see me, I saw the clone body. And it really freaked me out because, you know, especially Earth people, we're used to having an ego or having a sense of who we are based on the way we look. What our skin tone is, what our age is, whether we think we're attractive, you know, all the things that we think are right with us are very tied into the physical. And when you lose all of that and you're in a clone body and you're looking in the mirror, then it hits you that 99% of what we think about ourselves is BS and doesn't matter. What matters is our soul, the condition of our heart and our soul. That's what matters. And the experience, although it was traumatizing, was very good at helping me to get over barriers when it came to making friends with beings that looked a little different than me. Because we all recognize that our bodies are just basically containers. And what really matters is the condition of our consciousness. That's what matters. That's the important thing. Doesn't matter if you're tall or short or skinny or got a big nose, none of that stuff matters. But if we're able to love and be peaceful and respectful, that matters. So that was a huge lesson for me. I get into all of this in great detail in my book. And then there's a third kind of way that you can have a consciousness transfer, and that's where you can actually get an identical clone body. So you're at home sleeping, but you are able to shift your consciousness into you, but it's actually an improved version and it gives you complete physicality. So when I went down on the other planets and I participated in the expeditions in the pre-settlement program, then I was able to have a completely full body experience as well as consciousness, except that I didn't have any physical imperfections. I had no wrinkles. I didn't need to wear eyeglasses. I felt fantastic. And it was really, really amazing. And then, after days, weeks, even months of that, then I'd wake up. I'd be always happy to see my cat, my kitty. She'd come greet me when I wake up. And I'd be happy for that. But then I'd go to get out of bed, and right away I'd have to fumble for my eyeglasses because now I was used to not having to wear glasses, having perfect vision. My back would be hurting, like all the stuff that comes to a senior woman. Well, at that point I was middle aged, well, actually pretty close to being a senior. And I was 10 years ago, and I'm going to be 69 next month. So just to show you. And so all of that, and then it was like, oh God, I'm back. It was incredible. And like I said, it only happened for 3 months of our Earth time. But I'm telling you, Brian, I had like 3.5 years worth of experience aboard the big ship and the different things that I did. And it was amazing. I've got so many adventures in the book. Yeah. And it's quite a different account of ET contact. And I think that's a good thing because sometimes in the UFO and in the ET community, people kind of get stuck in tracks. And I think it's good for the readers and the enthusiasts and the researchers to realize there are many, many different kinds of experiences we can have with ET. And mine is just as valid as everybody else's. I don't expect anyone to believe me. That's not the point of the book. The point of the book is to say, this is what happened. This is what it was like for me before, and this is what it's like for me now. And open, if you want, you can open your minds and your hearts and have more contact, and you're going to love it. You're just going to love it because it adds a whole dimension so that when you do watch the news, you're not as triggered by it. You're not as caught up in it because you know that this is not all there is. And then we start to see how much has been held back from us and how programmed we've become over many generations. And we can start to break free from that. And we can consciously tap into the love harmonic. We can start having happier, healthier lives. Our relationships with others improve. Well, not with some can't handle it, and that's okay. But we meet all kinds of new friends and community, and life becomes sweet in a way that we never dreamed possible. That's the importance of my book, Brian. Learn the stunning details about ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living and expressing spirituality, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, meet the new neighbors, introduces you to many different ET beings, the healing pods, the interior of the big ship, my orientation process, cultural events, and off world mating practices. In my contact experience, I learned a great deal about the big ship, intergalactic and transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. Once I published my first book, I felt the need to create a second book called Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys Picture Book. I worked with AI to develop many images of beings that we have come to know of as the Greys. These beings come from many places, realms, dimensions, and timelines, and although they are of the same species as other humanoids, they are from many different family lines and races. What qualifies them as greys is that their skin does not contain the pigment necessary to reflect light in our visible range of the color spectrum, so to us, they all appear to be various shades of gray. Beyond this physical attribute, there is much diversity in their origins, cultures, purposes, and physiological details. My goal is to get you used to the looks of beings which are different than humans in order to reduce your fear and increase your familiarity so you will remain more rational and grounded once the ET presence escalates beyond debate. Enjoy these images and notice the things we have in common so you will see that although they are different from us in appearance, we are essentially many family lines within one species. Paperback and Kindle versions of both books are now available on Amazon worldwide. Search the Amazon and Kindle bookstores and pick up your copies today.
Yeah, and yeah, your experience is another piece of the puzzle. Like all these experiencers, they're just having their own experience, but when you put it together with hundreds or thousands of experiencers, it gives us more of a sense of the puzzle, putting it all together, you know?
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, and your memory suppression, I guess that's a hallmark of the whole experiencer phenomena, is that memories are suppressed. And like their one survey indicated, perhaps 5% of the world's population has had ET contact, but they don't remember it, or they just remember fragments. So, yeah, you must
Mhm.
have learned so much, but it's understandable it'll be suppressed from your memories. That's the way it goes, I guess.
Well, yeah, in the beginning, I got to tell you, it blew my mind because it was too much. Can you imagine trying to fit, say, 3 weeks or a month's worth of experiences into one night, only having the day to sort it out and then doing it again? And so by the time the 3 months ended, I was a little bit crazy. I cut myself off from contact with anybody, my neighbors or anybody. I kept to myself. I was exhausted, really exhausted because I didn't really get any sleep, you know? And, and then I found that I was not really able to remember little bits and pieces, but it was too much. And it actually took me several years to kind of make sense of it and to start putting it into some order. And then in 2017, I got the call from what I call my spiritual guides. And they said, Karen, it's time to come out and start talking about it. And I kind of went, no, I don't want to. And yeah, it's time, right? And I started going on podcasts and doing podcasts, not too much. And then in 2019, I'm on Facebook, and Chris Matthew, who is the owner of Forbidden Knowledge News, he put out a call for people who wanted to come on his show and talk about their experiences. And I wrote him a letter, and he had me on his show. And I went back several times, and then he had in 2020, we couldn't really go anywhere. We're all locked down, and he had an online conference called Forbidden Knowledge Con, and he had me as one of the presenters. And he also invited me to participate in a roundtable discussion where I met Preston Dennett. And Preston, I don't know if you know
Oh, yeah,
Preston.
I've done videos with Preston Dennett. Yeah, I've known him for a few years.
Okay, he's a wonderful guy. And he recently wrote a book about Dolly Saffron's lifelong experiences with
Yeah, I
the
had her on
Greys.
too. Had them both on. Yeah.
Yeah, they're lovely people. And Preston said to me, Karen, can you send me a copy of your presentation? And would it be okay if I share it with my friend Dolly? And I said, sure. So I emailed him a PDF. And he wrote back, he said, Karen, you got to write a book. He says, you got to write a book. This is incredible. And I went, okay. And then I started organizing my thoughts. And as things would come back to me, I would meditate a lot. And as things would come back to me, I'd go and jot it down. But I got to tell you, Brian, it took me 3.5 years to actually create the book, to put it in logical order, remember enough of the details. It was a big job. I wanted it to be accurate. I wanted it to be factual. I mean, I could make up all kinds of stuff, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be as absolutely true to my real life experience as possible. And I wanted it to be fairly well written so that it was enjoyable to read. I didn't want to just have dates and facts. I want to bring the reader into my experience and have them see it through their imagination and to recognize what's possible. So yeah, so anyway, I got that done in just last December. I finally got it published. It's in Kindle and it's in paperback, and I'm saving up because it costs quite a bit of money to have it narrated for Audible, but
Oh,
eventually I'm
yeah.
going to have it out on Audible. And then in the meantime, I'm working on my new book, but I don't know. I don't have to talk about that now. If you have more questions about the book I already have out.
Yeah, I'm interested in the process of the notes. Like in 2014, did you start taking notes when you had these experiences?
No, I thought it was nuts. I thought I was crazy. And I tried telling other people, and they all thought I was crazy. And all I did was end up alone and isolated and confused. It was emotionally not good. I'm not sorry it happened, not at all. And now, in retrospect, it had to unfold that way because your psychology can only handle so much. I mean, I hear people going, "Oh yeah, and I went out and I went on a spaceship and I went to Mars and then I came back and then I did a full day at work and then I took my kids to the park." And I'm going, "How? How could you?" Like, I mean, we're used to having a reality that's a certain way. When we're shown something so completely different, and we don't have language for it, Brian. We don't have words, we don't have concepts for it. We're not allowed, right? Unless you're a science fiction writer, you're not allowed. So I didn't have language for it, and I had not done much reading. I actually have reading comprehension issues, which a learning disability, which is another reason why it was such a challenge to write the book. And no, I was really messed up for a few years. I'm not going to lie, uh, because it was huge. It was a huge experience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I've done some videos with Ray Hernandez. He's a director of the Conscious Contact Research Institute. He describes imagination, like you were saying, it's an actual contact modality, like visualization practice. And I've been a Buddhist teacher since 1995, and I do these like day of invocation practice where you visualize a particular day of or ET to get some sense of contact. So imagination is a contact modality, like you're saying. It's not like you're just making stuff up. It's a way to
Mm-mm.
actually reach with ETs. I guess that's your experience, right?
Absolutely. And once we get a handle on it, oh my God, it's very exciting. And we spend a lot of time in front of screens. I spend too much time doing research on my computer, or else I'm
Yeah,
on
me
my
too.
phone or answering emails. And, really, what I well, here in Alberta, it's pretty cold this time of year, but I recommend people get outside into the natural world and start shifting their focus and allowing this is catch. Now, I'm going to just give people a little tip on how you can start receiving transdimensional contact. And this
Yeah,
tip
yeah.
is, when you're walking down a path and you're out in nature, your eyes focus on what's straight ahead, but we actually have peripheral vision. And you can actually right now see out your peripheral vision either side of your foot where you're focused, and see the walls and see the plants, or if you're outside you can see the trees that are going by. Like, our range of vision is much more than we've kind of trained it all to go forward for the screen time, right? So when you're out there you can see peripherally. So what I recommend people do is to start listening inside their conscious mind peripherally. It's the same concept. So normally we would have these little communications and we just brush them away because we're busy worrying, what we're going to make for dinner or what our neighbor might be saying about us. Do you know what I mean? Or we may even be getting some paranormal experiences and we're pushing it away, going, no, no, that can't be real, because nobody wants to be crazy. Nobody. And let's face it, until you get your equilibrium, you kind of feel like you're going a little bit crazy for a while. And you wonder, oh my God, am I schizophrenic? What's going on here, right? But if people can start listening in their peripheral, so if you're a meditator, awesome, perfect time to start listening to these little bubbles of communication that start to come in. And instead of discounting them and pushing them away, let them come. And you might be surprised at what you're able to develop over time. And it's a
Yeah, I've
skill.
done that. That's my experience of channeling, like the stream of thought impressions coming in, and yeah, listening to that, going with the flow, and then I would write it down. I would get
Yeah.
channel messages that way. So I like what you said about looking at the periphery of your vision, the periphery of your thoughts. That's a good
Yes,
technique.
absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, another thing that's going to help is if we're able to hold sufficient frequency. And what I mean by that is our whole body, I believe our bodies are the temple. I don't go to church. I'm not saying anything against religion. If it works for people, I'm so happy for them. But my body is my temple and I need it to function properly. So I have to pay attention to what I'm eating, the people I'm associating with, what I'm doing with my body. I need to pay attention to that. Now, no one's perfect. No one, and you don't have to be perfect. Obviously, I've had transdimensional experiences in abundance, and I'm not perfect. But the point is that your body holds this technology, and so it needs to be functioning at a level as well as possible. And then the other part is we want to practice the virtues. So you could start off by trying to be more patient, first of all, with yourself, and being more compassionate and empathetic to yourself. And that's not easy. I think that's the hardest thing. And then you start to be more patient with other people, and you find that your whole reality starts to shift. If you've got problems with your temper, you need to practice mildness. That's not easy. You start to recognize in your body the different stages that build up to discontent. And if we're paying attention to what's going on in our body is wonderful for communicating and letting us know when things are wrong or things are right. We can really tell by our body sensations. So those are the virtues. We can also practice faith. We can practice, like I said, self-control. We can practice being peaceful, not getting upset, having exercising our ability to choose how we want to react to situations. What happens is we don't realize it, but we're actually now entering more and more into what I call the love harmonic. And then our harmonics are what connect us with other beings of similar harmonic. So people sometimes say to me, oh, Karen, aren't you afraid that you'll get, demon attachments and stuff from doing this? And I say, no, not at all. Now, if I was in a terrible state of discontent, angry all the time, hateful and resentful, and drowning in guilt and remorse and grief, yeah, I maybe would connect with those other frequencies that are similar. But when you're vibing on the love harmonic, and you're really trying to do your best to exchange the vices for the virtues, our harmonic frequency comes up. Now we're closer in alignment with these other beings that we want to connect with: angels, elementals, extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, crypto-terrestrials. There is an endless possibility. I get into all of that in my book.
Yeah, good. I'm interested in the kind of hierarchy of beings. I mean, from what I've studied, the Greys are quite common. These people say the Greys, but the Greys seem to take orders from the Mantids. I know Richard Dolan says whenever the Mantids are seen with other beings, the Mantids are always in charge. But we don't usually see the boss on the factory floor. People see more Greys. I'm just wondering what's your experience with the hierarchy amongst the ETs amongst themselves?
Well, again, my experience is a little different. I only have very limited experience with the Greys. I have no experience with the Mantids. But when I was on the big ship, there's no hierarchy. Everybody is sovereign. Everybody knows that we need to be patient with each other, that, beings, especially beings from speaking worlds, before they learn how to do telepathy properly, they're going to do things that are not necessarily the social custom aboard the big ship. And so empathy and patience are very big, but there's no need for a hierarchy. There's no need. Everybody knows what needs to be done, or and it's extremely, extremely peaceful. But everyone's autonomous. Everyone knows that they carry the divine feminine and the divine masculine, that they need to treat other beings the way they want to be treated. They perfected this, so there's no need for a hierarchy. I saw no evidence of a hierarchy. Even those who interface with the big ship, what you might consider engineers, they're not above or below anybody else. Everybody has rights, and they don't have a hive mind, but they are telepathic. And I'm going to tell you, telepathy is a little different than what I expected. Like, I didn't get messages in my mind that were in English. That didn't happen. I actually had to take using the virtual reality headset. I actually had to take intensive training. I spent 2 or 3 hours every afternoon training in telepathy, and there's 4 levels of training. The first one is the basic one, where we just are, the ship just gives you into your imagination basic shapes, and you have to hold that basic shape in your mind for 3 seconds, then 6 seconds, then 9 seconds. And you're rewarded with kind of a dopamine rush. I don't know how it works, but it's like getting a virtual warm hug. It feels very good. That's the reward system when you get it right. And the second level of telepathy is the advanced, and there it's more complex. So instead of seeing a sphere or a triangle or a square, you now see, I mean, instead of a circle, a triangle, and a square, you now see a sphere, a pyramid, or a cube. And then very soon you start to see very simple things like a flower or a basketball. It could be anything, usually from your earth experience. And then once you get that done, you can move up into the intermediate level. And then you see how these different objects interact with each other, forming more complex concepts. And then the final level is mastery. And when you get to mastery, you can manipulate all kinds of images in your mind. And that's the communication rather than being a word-based communication. And it's not just visuals, you get body sensations and emotions. It's a combination that you read along with what your body's feeling and the mental images. And the last level, which is mastery, you learn to either withhold or give emotion to your communication. And by the time you get through all of that, then you can get into training, your community gets bigger because oh yeah, I forgot one really important part. The most important part of all of this is learning to keep our thoughts to ourselves. So you have to learn how to keep your thoughts to yourself. That's called shielding, right? And so you have to do that. Then you also have to learn how to project to one person or maybe two or three people, but not include the whole group. And then you need to learn how to project to the whole group. So it's kind of these different levels of broadcast. And it's kind of like learning to whisper when you're used to shouting all the time, and that was the hardest for me, was to learn how to keep my thoughts to myself. But that is how we show love to other beings. You don't want to tell them all your stupid thoughts in the back of your mind. That's not loving. And that doesn't produce order. That just would create a big cacophony of confusion. And there was no confusion on board the big ship. So I think that's why they didn't need a hierarchy. There wasn't any, not that I was able to discern. And there's no scheduling either. It's not like at 8 o'clock you show up and you do this. It's just you do get some communication. Oh yeah, I wanted to go and do that. So you go there and you do that. When you're hungry, you go to food, and often the friends that you're really close to, they also are kind of synchronized or synced to you. And that's how things are done. So it was very, very, very different than the way we do things here on Earth.
Yeah, yeah. From what I've studied, like telepathy is the hallmark, and it's more of a whole community feeling, I guess, because it's a telepathic society. People know what to do, and they work with each other sort of automatically, like I guess more of a group mind kind of thing. I can understand that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah, very,
fascinating.
yeah, very, very, very much so. And so telepathy is the intergalactic and transdimensional and interdimensional language. And I think on Earth we lost that, and we got introduced to languages. There's the story in the Bible of the Tower of Babel, right? Maybe they were all telepathic before that. That got shut down, and then they all had to rely on languages. And languages are a huge source of misunderstanding, and
Yeah.
and word languages are very deceptive, as we can see by just the promises put out by politicians, even. Words are a great source of misunderstanding, and just how much conflict on Earth is because of our Earth-based languages. Can you imagine if we all communicated telepathically? There's no lying, there's no deception. Wow.
Yeah, that would be good. I know in Buddhism, number three on the Eightfold Path, the Buddha said is right speech. You put a lot of emphasis on the importance of speech, that they can start wars, they can heal rifts between people. But speech is a big issue, of course.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask, just sort of test my theory from what I researched, like the whole UFO phenomenon going back over a century. I think is about the ET contact and hybrid program. I think there's a ET human hybrid program going on to sort of advance humanity. I know
Uh-huh.
the way Jeff Silver, you interviewed him, he describes it as a difference between going from gorilla to human, that we're in a process over a period of time, could be generations or a century or more, where the new human, he said, will be like telepathic, have what quantum dimensional conscious, meaning in tune with higher dimensions and more of a spiritual orientation in life. So we're in a process of switching from Homo sapiens sapiens to some kind of new humanity 2.0. Just wondering what's your impression of that? That's kind of my current hypothesis.
Well, I have many friends who have extensive um, contact with the Greys. Some say there's no such thing as the hybrid program. No, but you know what? You know how many different uh, races of Greys there are and different agendas? Like, it's infinite. Other people like Dolly Saffron says, oh, absolutely, there's a hybrid program. She has had several hybrid children herself. And Jeff, in his reality, there is hybrid, there's definitely hybrid. So I wouldn't rule it out. Just because, yes, in the rising. So just because I didn't experience it doesn't mean that it isn't a real thing. And so a lot of what Jeff says makes absolute perfect sense. Now, for me and my understanding, we're actually created beings. We are from one root race. We're all the same species, but we're different family lines. So we're different races. So everybody on Earth is of the human race. We think there's all these different races of humans on Earth. No, there's only one. We are the human race. And then there are races that are from other places, other dimensions, other realities. But we're all created with a spark of the divine. And that makes us special. So, as far as I'm concerned, we did not evolve out of apes or monkeys that were part of an intergalactic transdimensional family. But that doesn't mean anyone else is wrong. That's just how I experience it. See, what the audience needs to remember is that we're taking these experiences that are quite fantastical. We don't have concepts for it. We don't have a psychological framework for it. We don't even have language for it. And we're filtering our experience through our own perceptual awareness, our own perceptual arena. And we're putting it into words to describe as best we can what we've been through. And so, we're using a very inefficient medium, being again language and words, right? And so I think that all of us are complementary in our experiences and not competitive. So I would never say to someone else, oh, no, that's not true because this is how it happened for me, because I'm aware that I'm also limited in my perceptions and on how I'm able to express and understand. So we're all trying to make sense of something that has been forbidden, literally forbidden. And, I think that's partly what the burning of the witches was about. I think that's partly what the Spanish Inquisition was about. And I also believe that's in a large part what the mental institutions and lobotomies and psychiatric drugs is all about. So this has been going on for a very long time where you had to be very careful talking about this stuff. And it's only been very, very recently, Brian, that we can come out and be open and honest about these experiences. And we're all kind of fumbling with trying to get it out there as best we can. So I recognize the sincerity in other humans that are sharing their experiences, and I am in no way would discount any of them. And I think Jeff's analysis is very well defined and very well thought out.
Yeah, I like what you said about psychiatry. Like my mother was schizophrenic, or maybe today should be called bipolar. But yeah, going back to the 19th century with psychiatry and drugs, I think, yeah, part of it was an agenda to suppress people from
Mm-hmm.
discovering some truth or some higher, to keep us in this sort of physical, scientific, materialist, annihilationist, atheistic worldview. So, yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
get
that,
into that. I get into that quite a bit in my book too. It's the false matrix suppressing
yeah.
the information.
Yeah, I've talked about that for years, like the globalists, how they control society and how it's a global thing. Yeah, I agree with you on that. So, yeah, you're right. It's only in recent decades that we could even talk about this kind of stuff without being sent to a mental hospital or really being thought of as generally crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't safe. And so no wonder our memories are suppressed before we come back,
Yeah, yeah,
you
to
know?
protect you.
Yes. Yes, it's a protection. And there are millions of us. So people will go through their lives and all of a sudden they'll have a triggering event. Sometimes it's a car accident. Sometimes they're just at the supermarket picking out cantaloupe. And all of a sudden they start having these memories and they get scared. And I know this happened to me. I went to the doctor and I wanted psychiatric drugs. I wanted to shut it off. I didn't want to be a crazy person. Who wants to be a crazy person? Not me. Life's hard enough, right? But now I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
old and I don't care what people think. And so the book is out. And yeah, so I hope everybody reads it. It's only like 160 pages, but very direct and very to the point and covers a lot of detail.
And should they get it on your website or just go to Amazon?
Amazon. And you know, it's funny when you go, maybe because it's a new release, but when you go to Amazon and you type in the name of the book, it comes back no search results. So you have to go into the Amazon bookstore. There's always a little menu on Amazon where you can click on books or you can click on Kindle, and they're linked. So even if you can't find it in books, go to Kindle, it'll be there. And then that's linked to the book and you can order it and it's available on Amazon worldwide. So I'm trying to encourage people who've bought the book so far, those that I know, please go on and leave me a review, because apparently when I get 15 reviews, then Amazon, that tells the algorithm that the book might be good. And then it starts putting it out there when people do a general search.
Oh, what if they just type in your name? Does it come up?
No, nothing. If you just go
Oh,
into Amazon and type in my name or type in the name of the book, you get nothing. You have to go to the
oh,
bookstore or you have to go on the Kindle store on Amazon, then type it in and it pops right up. So I'm going to talk to Preston. I'm going to be on his show, him and Dolly, their show on Monday. I'm going to ask him if there's a special trick, but I've heard I have to have 15 reviews. So it's easier to sell the book than it is to get people to come back and leave a review. So I'm hoping people will come back and leave me reviews. And
yeah,
then
no, in
if that
Canada, you
ever,
have to go to amazon.ca. In the United States, you got to go to amazon.com. Otherwise,
yeah,
you're paying to ship across the border, which is not necessary. So you have to know what country you're in when you go to Amazon.
yeah, and you get it way faster if you order it in the country you're in. There's also Amazon UK, there's Amazon Australia, there's an Amazon everywhere. So in Canada, yeah, go to amazon.ca, but then go to the little tab on the side that has the little lines, and that's the menu, and click on books or click on Kindle, and then
Okay.
put in the name of the book, and you'll be able to find it. And as I mentioned before, I'm not sure if I should talk about it now or wait, but I'm also working on a second book
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
gonna.
Tell us about your second book. Let's go into
Okay,
that.
so this is how things work for me. I call them my spiritual guides. I just get direction in my mind that I have no idea even sometimes where it comes from, right? I just get these directions. And I started getting these directions to produce a picture book with lots of images of grays to help to reduce fear, because it's only a short matter of time before these grays are going to start appearing. And the difference between everyone going into mass panic or staying grounded might be just in their familiarity with their form, which is a little different than
Yeah,
us.
people are more
And
familiar now. It's part of pop
yeah,
culture
and
now.
I just kept getting this message or urge to fiddle with images on AI and create images that are of grays. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of grays. People got to realize it's not all one family line. It's not all one group. It's not from one specific star system. There are many different kinds of grays. But I started working with AI and I was really happy with the results. So I've got a lot of images finally, and I thought, yeah, these are going to do the trick. So then I started to write the book, and I did the introduction, and then I included my own experience with grays and ETs. It's not too long a chapter. And then I asked Dolly Saffron, Preston Dennett, and a bunch of other experiencers. I don't know if you know Nancy Thames and quite a few.
Oh,
If
yeah, yeah. I've interviewed Nancy. Yeah.
Oh
Nancy,
yeah, and Phil,
yeah.
I don't know if you know Philip Kinsella and his twin
No,
brother Ronald Kinsella. They're
no.
in England. Well, anyway, I contacted them and said, "Hey, do you guys want to contribute a paragraph or two to my book?" And they said, "Sure." So then the second chapter is a section where each one of these friends of mine share their basic experience, and then I put their contact information below that. And so that's so that people can go, wow, look at all these people that have had experiences with the grays and they're not afraid and they're telling us these are benevolent beings, right? And then I get into the pictures. So the first chapter, I think, is gray females Then I do a chapter on gray males, then gray children, then human looking grays, then hybrids. And I get into all these different, and then I do family snapshots, which are really cute. It's got the dad, the mom, and a baby or children, and they're doing the little family picture. It's AI generated. These are not real pictures, guys. I just want to be really honest about it, but they're really cute. And there's going to be about 50 in each chapter of these images. And I'm going to have it produced in color, even though grays don't have a lot of color. I mean, the thing that makes all the grays similar is they actually do have pigment, but the pigment doesn't reflect light that's in our visible spectrum. We only see a very narrow little band of the color spectrum. And so their pigment reflects light outside of our ability to pick it up, and that's why they appear to be grays, right? And there's other similarities. They often have larger heads, larger eyes, and they often have like basically no body fat. And so I just, so there's a lot of different kinds of grays. So I've linked them all, but there's basically a picture book and it's got a lot of images. I'm really excited about it because when people pick that book up and look through it, it doesn't take long before you start to see our similarities and you're not as shocked by our differences. And when you look into the eyes of the children, you kind of go, "Aw," you know what I mean? And it softens your heart and it prepares a place for these beings to come and visit us without everybody freaking out. And if we can remain grounded and balanced and calm, we're going to do much better with this experience. And I believe it's coming fast. And I believe I was guided to do the picture book. So I'm really excited. And that should be out probably, I don't know, maybe in about a month that'll be ready and that'll be coming
Oh,
out. And
good, good,
it's called Transdimensional 2 Meet the Grays picture book.
good, good. Yeah, now you
Yeah.
described the city-sized ships to be kind of flattened on the top. I know other people said the same thing when I showed them that picture of the huge city-sized ship. People said, well, the one I saw was actually a bit more flattened on the top and
Yeah.
bottom. People have said that.
Yeah,
Clarify.
because they stack. When they come together, they stack on top and below, and it becomes one unit. And it's really cool because culturally, it's like a clan gathering with all these different clan members that come and you make friends and you see old friends and you learn things and you swap technologies and discoveries and fashion. It's very exciting, but it's very quiet because everybody's telepathic, right?
Did they describe how these big city-sized ships, how they're created, how they're built? Like you mentioned, they gather around a star and they
Yeah,
join together. How do they create a new one?
I don't know, but somehow I think they're more like being born than being fabricated,
So they're
if that
living,
makes sense.
living ship.
Yes, and they stay within this grid or this mesh until they're mature enough to take on a crew. And then the crew is humanoids who immigrate from other ships that have more experience. And I guess they probably disengage from that world and practice doing interdimensional travel. Oh, I want to tell you something else that's really interesting I didn't mention, and that is how do they get their energy? This is really cool. So, how they get their energy is from us. They're actually powered by us. And so, what happened on the day that I was at least once, I was involved in repowering the big ship. And basically, what we do is we just congregate wherever we want, where we feel comfortable. And then the ship emits these tones that put us into a deep meditative state. I fell asleep. I always do during those kind of things. I don't know why. And then it takes from our life force energy, all of us, our collective life force energy, what it needs. And then afterwards, we feel tired. I was exhausted. I actually had to have help getting to a healing pod the first time. But then our own bodies will regenerate our own life force energy. Like, that's not, if we're healthy, that's not a difficult thing for us to regenerate. We can regenerate, the big ship cannot, right? And so it gets replenished by our life force energy. And they kind of make it a not a religious holiday, but they make it a little bit of a spiritual event where everybody sort of takes it easy. We have a different kind of schedule for the day. We kind of hang out, we meditate more, we eat less, and we just kind of make an event out of it. And similar to when the big ship wants to alter its location, done very similar. So basically, the ship emits tones. Um, we go into a deep state of meditation, and the ship somehow uses our technology that's in our brains to fold space, and point A becomes point B. We have the technology, the big ship doesn't. And so, from our collective biological technology that we're born with, that is what it uses to alter location. And I thought that was really cool
Wow.
too. Yeah.
Wow. Another question I have is, did your ETs explain like why, like we've had UFOs since 1947, quite a lot, and like why are they here? What's their plan? What is there an ET agenda? Have they explained the why of their presence here?
No, not at all. In
Oh,
fact, there's a huge absence of that. And I'll tell you why I think. I think I go into that in the book too. I think that is because these beings are so far removed from our way of being. They're so loving, they're so peaceful. If they realized how we live and do things on Earth, they would never sleep again. It would be so disturbing to them, like watching a horror movie. They wouldn't be able to even handle it. And for some reason, that's why I was sort of spirited away to that rather than them come here to this. And so the group that I interface with is a very different group, definitely a different group. So you're going to have to talk to someone like Jeff or Nancy or Dolly, because they're the ones that know, they're the ones that interact. I don't have any experience with them. And I also have no experience with like the Ashtar Command or the Federation of Planet. I have no understanding of any of that. So I'm not going to pretend that I do. I'm sorry, I don't know.
yeah. So you said you didn't see many grays. So what was the most common type of ET that you saw that you spent time with?
Well, I've got many images in my book. They look a lot like us. Some have no hair, some have hair. Most are taller. There's some that are shorter, but most are definitely taller. I would say like between 6 and 7 feet. They have larger frames than us. They have wider hands and wider feet than us. They generally proportionally have larger heads and larger eyes, but most have eyes like us with irises. You can see their eye color. There's all different skin tones. Some are, well, actually, I didn't see too many that were pale like me, but some were pink, some were orange, some were like pale blue, but most are different tones of brown. Most are different tones of
Oh,
brown for sure.
oh,
And they have little bit different shaped heads. None of them were what I would consider ugly or scary looking. I would say the most different would be this being here that looks like what we would consider to be a gray.
yeah. It looks like
But
a gray.
yeah, but I've got quite a few images in the book, so you can feel free to see that and check that out. But
Yeah.
they're not really that different. The big difference is they are healthy in a shocking way, because when I come back to Earth and I'm out doing my grocery shopping, looking at my fellow humans, then I realize how sick we are. We're not doing very well. Physically, we are not very healthy. We're sick and we're underdeveloped and we're not muscular or
Yeah.
healthy or anything. It's really, really sad what's become of mainstream society. The other thing is these beings live much longer than us, like at least 500 years. And they have, if they're going to form families and bear children, that's within the first 100 years. But when they get older, what they do is they develop their paranormal gifts and abilities. And they don't have to die at 500. I'm just saying that they most live to be at least 500. But when they get old, they don't get old the way we do. They don't lose their minds, they don't lose their memories. They remain strong and fit and vital. And then when they're ready to move on to the next stage of life, although we call it death, a different way of being, then they actually have a celebration and they don't need assistance in dying. They just pass over very peacefully when they're ready. And it's considered a really joyous occasion, just as much as when a baby is born. Same kind of feeling. And that's what happens to them.
So they have like another body that they go to. They like just choose the next body.
No, I don't know where they go to. They go to, I am guessing, a higher dimensional reality where they may not need physicality.
Yeah, it could be something like that.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Wow, you've really had amazing experiences and you express it really well, from your experience. I really like this. Maybe we should have you as with my meetup group. We could have Q&A with a bunch of people on a Zoom. We could do
Sure,
that.
I'd be into that for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it would be good
Well,
if people could buy the book and read it
yeah,
before, because then they're going to know, well, they're going to already have a lot of the information, and then their questions will be, the things that I didn't address within the book that I can fill in the gaps. That would be really good too. I mean, they don't have to, but it would be very helpful if they did.
yeah. Well, we should
Yeah,
give them some time. Like if we book like a month in advance with the links,
yeah,
give them a chance to get the book and
that'd
read
be
it.
perfect.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
after I stop the recording, we can talk about a date for that. But anything else
Okay.
you want to cover? It's been over an hour. It's been a really good.
No, no, it's good. I really appreciate you having me on, Brian. And I
Sure.
really appreciate that you're open-minded to hear that my, experience is a little different than most. But I think it's valid. And I think, again, I think that a lot of us are having these experiences we just don't remember. And maybe once people read the book or hear me talk about it, they're going to go, well, wait a minute. This experience once, but I thought I was, I didn't want to have it. So I just pushed it away. And maybe
Yeah.
people will be more open to it because I think it's the natural evolution on where we're headed.
Yeah, I think it's good that we keep talking about this. Like it's a very important mission to keep having these conversations in public.
Yeah,
Other people, there's so many experiences out there who just might have a slight inkling that they're experiencers because the memory's been suppressed. So this is a good thing
yeah,
for the community.
yep, yep. And if there's anybody else that has a podcast that would love to have me on as a guest, I would love to attend. And yeah, just thank you so much. And I wish much love and happiness to your audience and to your members and to all the work that you do. It's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Karen. I really appreciate you being on. Thank you kindly. Okay.
Welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment. And please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.